What is going on, everyone? This is Zach back here with another episode of Clutch Crew Sports. And here in today's episode, we are going to be talking about games 4 and 5 of the NBA Finals. Things sure have taken a turn since the last time we talked. So we're going to discuss the Bucks taking the series lead and what we think will happen in game 6 and maybe 7 if it happens. Hopefully you guys enjoy this. And now let me introduce you to the rest of the crew.
What's going on, everybody? Eric, your ranting co-host here. I'm a little upset that I didn't get to watch Game 5 at all. I had a unfortunate work incident that got in the way of that, but I did get to see Game 4. Dude, tell me about it. Like I try not to rant about my life, but I could rant about what happened to me at work. I will not get into that, but yeah, so I was upset I missed that, but I did get to see Game 4, and obviously we got the crew that are the rest of the crew here that are going to break down Game 5 too. So I'm excited to talk about it, and yeah, I guess that's it for now.
What is going on, everybody? It's Connor, the co-host with the most, and I'm gotta say I'm super excited for my client Giannis Antetokounmpo that he has an opportunity to win his first NBA championship on Tuesday. Obviously, if it doesn't happen on Tuesday, then he's got a chance to do it on Friday. So super excited for him, and excited to break down these games since it has taken quite a turn now that the Bucks have won 3 games in a row.
All right, before we start, I'm gonna call you out a little bit, Connor. How are you still Giannis's agent when you pick Suns in 5 for the series?
Well, hey, because none of us thought that Giannis was gonna play in this series, so that pick was made with the idea that Giannis wasn't gonna play. Trust me.
I thought you were gonna say, like, I'm also representing CP3 and
No. See, like I said, if we knew that Giannis was going to be playing at the, fully healthy like he is, then I definitely would have picked the Bucks. I know we had this discussion.
Yeah, okay.
We had this discussion back during the Eastern Conference Finals when we were like, like who would you pick? Because we were expecting to be Bucks and Suns, so we were already talking like who would you pick? And I was like, I would pick the Bucks over the Suns. But so he's still my client. I'm still raking it. I'm still raking in the imaginary big bucks from him. So
yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys. So
I also realized that was a pun saying the big bucks.
I didn't even catch it. We're turning into one of those podcasts now. I know some podcasts that like to make dad jokes and puns and things. But anyways,
that wasn't intentional.
That's true. That's good. At least it wasn't like pre-planned, So guys, things like I said have taken definitely a turn in the series since we last spoke about it, because it was 2-1 Suns last week. Now it's 3-2 Bucks, and as you're listening to this on Tuesday, the Bucks have the chance to close the series out and win the NBA Finals, or we could have the Suns win, and then it would go to a Game 7, and I think it's actually going to be on Thursday, Game 7, which
I've been
so
used to I've been so used to these games having 2 days in between.
It doesn't make sense. I don't know why they wouldn't want it to be on Friday instead of Thursday, but anyways, that's just how they have it scheduled. Game 7 would be on a Thursday. If it
NBA, boo.
Yeah, really. But like we could have a chance. We could have a chance then on the night that you're listening to this. So let me just recap quickly the scores from games 4 and 5. So we talked about the games not being close in the first 3. These last 2 have definitely been a lot closer. So the Bucks won 109-103 in Game 4, and then they won 123-119 in Game 5. So Game 5, the scoring picked up.
Game 4, the Suns broke their streak of 118 winning games.
Yeah, they did. I know. I jinxed them, I guess, about that maybe. But yeah, Game 5 had definitely featured a lot more offense, but let's start with Game 4 first, and I'll let Eric introduce the topics during Game 4 and kind of break it down. So, Eric, take it away.
Yeah, so I saw a lot of people on Twitter and stuff that were very excited about this game because we finally had a close game. And I understand that. The first three games obviously were blowouts. They tended to not be exciting at times in the second half. And so I understand that. But for me, this game actually wasn't really that exciting. The reason why I'm saying this is because I know Zach doesn't have this on the slide, but the officiating in this game was god awful. I mean, it was some of the worst officiating that I have seen in a long time. And I'm not a fan of either team in this series. I'm cool with both teams. I'm going to be happy for whichever team wins the NBA Finals. If the Bucks get it, I'll be happy for Giannis and that he'll have overcome the foreseen choke artist type of thing, like Zach has mentioned on here before. And obviously he's Connor's client and everything, so I'll be happy for him. And the Suns, of course, CP3 was on my Thunder last year and carried us to the playoffs when everybody thought we would get last, and led us to a good season. And I'm a fan of Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton both as well. So I'll be happy for either team. So I don't have a horse in the fight. I'm not like, oh, I'm all for the Suns or all for the Bucks. So I just wanted to get that out of the way because I don't want someone listening to this to maybe think I'm a Suns fan or something, and that's why I'm complaining about the refs. But when it's this late, when it's the finals, obviously if there's egregious fouls or really obvious fouls, the refs need to call them and do their thing. But they needed to let these guys play. Now, like I said earlier, I didn't get to see Game 5. I don't know if it got any better or not in Game 5, but Game 4 was horrible. And I know the one that everybody talks about was the one near the end of the game when Devin Booker had 5 fouls and he obviously fouled Drew Holiday, who was trying to score on a fast break, and the refs didn't call it. And obviously, and Bucks fans have every right to be upset about that. That was the main one that everybody's talking about. But there were just so many fouls throughout the game that were so ticky-tacky, where the contact was minimal and things like that. And it led to players getting into foul trouble, which meant they couldn't really play their games. And then I noticed this too, like PJ Tucker and Jay Crowder are both horrible floppers. This is very well known, but it seemed like when the refs were calling all these ticky tacky fouls throughout the game, that they took it into overdrive. Man, I mean, someone would poke them with their finger and they would launch themselves across the court as if they got shot with a shotgun or something. I mean, it was ridiculous. And flopping is what I hate the most in the NBA. I mean, it's the reason why I can't really watch soccer, because soccer is a very skilled game and there's a lot of planning that goes into it and everything with the formations and how they move the ball across the field. But then as soon as somebody gets tapped with their foot and they do 10 somersaults and roll, I can't do it, man. And that's what was happening.
Neymar.
Yeah, and that's what was happening in this game. And I hate that stuff, man. That stuff drives me nuts. And I will say too, obviously the Bucks won the game, and I know Bucks fans were upset about the thing with Devin Booker, but there were some fouls on Devin Booker earlier in the game that should not have been called on him. He should not have had 5 fouls at that point in the game. And I think that's the reason why they didn't call it, because they knew that I think other people were saying, well, they don't want to eject a superstar player. No, I think it's because they knew that some of the other fouls they shouldn't have called on him. So then they gave him this one as a makeup call for the other bad calls on him. But unfortunately, then you have these bad calls on him, and then you have a bad no call on him, so that looks bad. But yeah, so this game was actually kind of hard for me to watch. I was not enjoying it. It's really hard to get into a game, especially when, like, you're not necessarily a fan of either team and you just want to enjoy the game. You just want to see a good game. It's hard when runs up the court, oh, foul, runs up the court, oh, foul, oh, contact foul, like all the time. It's just, it's annoying. So I had a hard time with that. But anyway, what I was getting to is about the Bucks winning is, I know while the Bucks fans were upset about the Devin Booker no call, and I know if they had lost this game that they would have blamed it on that. But really, the Bucks should have won this game easily, because getting into actually what happened in the game besides the officiating, Chris Paul was horrible in this game. I mean, this man could not buy a bucket, and it was very unlike him because he's normally a very efficient mid-range shooter. He's very good at creating shots for himself, especially when he gets mismatches where he's got a big on him or something. He normally makes a lot of those shots in his sleep. So I don't know what happened to him. I don't know if the moment was getting too big for him or if it was just an off night and he didn't have it. I don't know what it was, but he was bad in this game. And he also had a lot of bad turnovers, especially late in the game when it was close at really critical points. And unfortunately, that's not going to get it done. And the one bright spot in the game for the Suns was Devin Booker. But then the problem was with the foul trouble, he had to sit out a large chunk of the third quarter. He had to sit out a large chunk of the fourth quarter. I mean, he had 42 points in this game, but if it weren't for the foul trouble, he probably would have got over 50, and it could have been a really amazing performance, but the refs ruined it with a lot of ticky-tacky foul calls on him. And then the same thing kind of happened to DeAndre Ayton. They were calling a lot of fouls on him against Giannis, and so he only ended up with 6 points. So the fact, if you had told me, like, if I hadn't watched this game and you had told me that Chris Paul only scored 10 and DeAndre Ayton scored 6, I would have said, well, the Bucks probably beat him by 25. I mean, the Bucks, especially with Middleton going off in the game, he was matching Devin Booker toe for toe with the scoring. Giannis had an efficient 26 points. I mean, the only really bad thing for the Bucks in this game was their three-point shooting wasn't very good. But other than that, like, they were playing pretty well. They should have won this game easily, even without the Devin Booker no call at the end. But I'll just ask you guys this before, like, we go to the next game. I mean, I don't know, like, if you all saw the whole game or only parts of this game or what you saw or didn't see, but did you think the officiating was as bad as I did? Was it a problem for you? And then also, like, I guess when you go into game 5, you can talk about if the officials did better in that game or what. But let me know what you guys thought about the officiating.
All right, yeah, I'll start first. I definitely I've seen some of the plays in the second half that you're referencing, and I agree. And I'll actually kind of speak on the refereeing part in a second, but I didn't think the first half was that bad. Eric, did you watch the first half of the game? Like, the first half to me, it was tied at halftime too. It's 53-53.
Yeah, I guess I should have said that. I mean,
Yeah.
The only issues I had in the first half there were a couple, like, kind of, I'm pretty sure they were in the first half. There were a couple of ticky-tacky ones on Ayton involving Giannis, like where he tried to take a charge, like, outside the restricted area, but it was like a couple of the fouls too. They were really late whistles, where so it's kind of like it looked like they were going to let him play. No, we're calling a foul, and so, like, I don't like that either when there's late whistles. Like, it's like I know it's quick and it's hard, but, like, when you wait that late, it makes it
as
look
long as it's
worse.
obvious. If it's like an obvious foul, I'm okay with it. But if it's if it's like debatable and it's late, then I have a problem with it.
Yeah, then they should have just let it go at that point. But yeah, other than, like, a couple of them in the first half, it wasn't that bad. But for whatever reason, in the second half, man, it was like foul, 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 like on everything. Like
I know, dude, and
I,
and like you're basically ranting on that, like, and I have a similar type of rant with the NBA with their with the challenges and replay reviews and things, because it just makes the game go on so much longer. Like, you see the 2 minutes and it's like 10 minutes. In reality, those last 2 minutes are 10 minutes, and it gets prolonged with all these fouls and free throws. I mean, nobody wants to go to a game and watch a team shoot 29 free throws and the other team shoot 19. Like, and that's not
yeah,
what the NBA
That's
wants. Like,
almost 50 free throws.
yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's like, all right, guys, let's line up and shoot 50 free throws. Like, who wants to
Yeah.
watch that? So that's really bad. But I agree with you. And you said something about the referees with the makeup call thing. That's totally. I'm speaking as a former referee, guys, as a small, little flag football league referee. It was one of those things, like, we definitely did. We would try and keep it to where, if we called like a tough foul, like, on one team, then the next time if we saw it, we would go the other way. Like, that's just how it was. Like, um, so I don't care what anybody says. Referees do that. Like, they definitely do. And also, too, they give the home team an advantage. Now, I didn't referee, real home environments and stuff, but that's another thing too. The Bucks being at home in this, that being at home is going to get you the friendly whistle, and that happened with them shooting 10 more free throws, I think, especially with what Eric said about the ticky-tacky fouls, which you would think, if ticky-tacky fouls are being called both ways, that would favor the Suns because they're a much better free throw shooting team, but they just didn't get the volume that the Bucks had. I think that's if the Suns get more free throws, then they win. But yeah, this was an odd game for sure, and I can agree with you, being close but not a super entertaining game.
I guess that was like my main point I wanted to get across, because I know everybody was yelling about the Devin Booker no call one at the end, but my thing is, it was bad both ways throughout like the whole second half.
Yeah.
They got to address that for sure.
And I think I want to say too, this was the game where one of the referees had COVID, so they had to bring in a replacement ref, like, not a normal referee, but not a guy who was supposed
Like
to
an
be doing the
alternate.
finals. Yeah, an alternate guy.
Not those NFL replacement refs.
No, this wasn't a guy off the street or anything. But I think this was the game where they didn't have their full crew. That's another thing too. If you change up the crew just a little bit, because these crews have been refereeing together all season long, they know they have a feeling just like these teams do. They have chemistry, and you throw in a brand new referee into that for an NBA Finals game, then that's going to create less chemistry within the referees. So that's another thing that might be a reason for it. Connor, do you have any thoughts on this?
I mean, you guys mostly covered everything. I guess my only thoughts on it are just like, I don't know, maybe this is one of the reasons why I've never liked basketball as much. But it's just, to me, like, sometimes understanding when I watch these games, like, when looking through, like, oh, what's a foul and what's not a foul. Like, I don't know. It's just, it is probably, I mean, I know the same thing happens, like, with pass interference in the NFL, but, like, it's probably, like, the most subjective thing out there, which in some ways is bad, just because, like, I'll be watching a game and you see this play where, like, some dude, like you said, goes up for a layup or whatever, and he gets, like, barely touched, and they're like, oh, whistle, foul, and you're like, okay, that was stupid. But then you go down the other end and you, like, watch some dude get mauled, like, going up for something, and then there's no call, and it's like, okay, well, then how is that not a foul? Like, I don't know. It's just, it's like I said, maybe it's one of the reasons why I don't watch basketball as much. It's just like, seeing when the foul, especially when there's a lot of fouls being called, and it's just like, well, I mean, who determines that? I don't know. There's not really any solution to that, unfortunately. Because I mean, like, I know in, sports like maybe tennis and baseball and whatnot, you could really have, like, AI officials to determine, like, oh, okay, like, pinpoint, no, like that was definitely safe or that was definitely out or like whatever. But you can't like have anything like that to determine like, oh, was that definitely a foul or not? There's always going to be subjective looks on that. And, it's like I said, it's just from the eye of the beholder. I mean, I noticed this in the NHL all the time too. Like, there's certain referees that will, they'll call like way more penalties. Like, there were games that I was watching with the Hurricanes where, there was one game against the Panthers where the Panthers literally had like 10 or 11 power plays, which is absolutely ridiculous for hockey. Like, 6 or 7 is on the high end, but 11, like,
Yeah.
it's like the officials are definitely out to get you at that point. But then you have other ones that, will call almost nothing. Like you'll see some dude get like, he'll take a stick to the face and then like they just like won't call it. I mean, maybe they just didn't see it or something, but it's just like, come on now. So I don't know. But I mean, I do agree that like that definitely ruins the game. And the NBA, a lot of these basketball games already have pace issues, especially at the end. When we get into this whole thing where, I mean, it's not as bad in the NBA as it is in college basketball, but like when we have to review it every single time the ball goes out of bounds when it's under like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
It's like it could still be like super obvious, but no, we have to take like 2 minutes to review it. And it's like, okay, when you already have pace issues with that, now you have even more pace issues when all the fouls are being called. And like you said, just makes it unenjoyable. So, hopefully we don't see that again in the rest of the series. But, it's unfortunate that inevitably in any 7-game series, there's going to be at least one game like this. And turned out this was the one.
Yep. Well said, guys. And then just one kind of question that I have for Eric is,
Okay.
do the Suns win this game like if they don't turn it over as much? Because 17 turnovers, I saw that and I was like, wow, that's uncharacteristic of the Suns. They're normally a team that doesn't turn it over much. Do you think would you say that's the biggest reason why they lost? Because you said you weren't really impressed with the Bucks.
Yeah, I mean, well, I was impressed with the Bucks in a lot of the sense, but
Okay.
but mainly it was the 3-point shooting that, because I know you've talked about that too, how they should probably quit relying on that. We talked about that in the previous episode, and obviously that continued in game 4 here. But yeah, I mean, obviously the turnovers were huge. I got so caught up in my rant on the refs, I didn't mention that. But
Yeah.
but I just the biggest problem for me for the Suns for game 4 in general was just Chris Paul, because he did have a lot of those turnovers, and some of them were really crucial in the late minutes of the game. But then also just the fact that he wasn't making any shots either. I mean, he was horrible with his shooting. He was horrible with his passing. And then obviously he's a liability on defense. So he literally provided nothing in this game. And I mean, and he was supposed to be the leader, and you can rely on me, I've got you, and all that. And he just did not have it in this game at all. So obviously the turnovers were costly, but I think Chris Paul overall was the biggest problem. I mean, if he's more efficient shooting, more efficient, not having turnovers like that combined, I think that would have got the Suns over the hump.
Well, I'm wondering if I saved this for later, but I was going to ask you, because I know we're going to talk about this for the Bucks later on, but like, where do you think, because I know at the beginning of this, we were all talking about, finals MVPs and how, Chris Paul was probably the favorite. So, I mean, where do you see in your mind now, like, if the Suns were to come back and win, obviously we don't know how they're going to perform, but like, do you think Devin Booker would be the front runner for it now?
I think he would have to be, unless if the Suns were to win the next 2 games, and if Chris Paul goes off in both of those games, then I do think you would have to give it to him, just because he was the spark behind the comeback, and he was their best player in the first 2 games,
right,
and their first 2 wins. So if it happens like that, then I still think he could get it. But I mean, games 3 and 4, though, in particular, he kind of went missing. I mean, and I hate to say that, because like I'm a fan of his game, as a fellow short guy, like It's nice to see
the fellow short guy.
It's nice to see, it's nice to see.
Eric, you should be appreciating Muggsy Bogues' game if that's the case.
Yeah. But,
he's about your height.
Yeah, he is. But imagine, how many players have you seen right at 6 foot tall and shorter, have the success that Chris Paul has had throughout his career? I mean, it's not very often.
The only other one I can think of right now is like Steph Curry, but he's not that short still though.
Yeah,
he's maybe
he's like what 6'3",
like 6'3".
Yeah, so I would love to see him get it, man. I really would. I respect his game and everything, but I hate to say this, but game 3 he didn't really do that good, and then game 4 especially. He kind of went on the Kyle Lowry missing milk carton, he just disappeared in game 4.
Another thing too about CP3, which is why I don't think I have a love for him as much as you do, Eric, is just he's also a big time flopper. Like, he's not on the level of PJ Tucker and Jake Crowder.
No,
but he sells things hard, man. But you kind of have to do that when you're his size, because it's one thing if you're Shaq, and you get tapped, but for him being smaller,
honestly, I feel like you have to sell it more if you're bigger, because if you're little, you can kind of I don't know. I guess it's more believable if you're smaller.
Yeah,
if someone shoves you, I feel like, because if you're Shaq, you have to really sell something, because
that's why he does that though, because if let's say, in today's NBA, in the finals, say if Giannis gets kind of lightly shoved, if he throws himself down to the ground, everybody's going to know he was faking it. But if Chris Paul gets kind of shoved a little bit and he kind of falls down, then it looks more believable. Even though he's overselling it, it looks more believable as a smaller guy.
Because
it's you're kind of get away with it more. I think that's why he does it.
Yeah,
I agree. As I mentioned earlier, hating flopping. I don't condone that part of his game for sure.
Yeah, you're right. Because if you look at Giannis, how big and how strong he is, it's some small push shoved him to the ground. No way.
Yeah, for sure.
But CP3 was bad. That's a big reason. And two, I just thought the turnovers in the first. I thought the Suns way outplayed the Bucks in the first half, but the turnovers were why they could never build up a lead, and then it eventually was tied. And I thought for it to be tied, I thought, wow, the Suns have really outplayed them, but it's tied. And I just noticed so many bad turnovers especially the first quarter. They were shooting a high percentage. They just weren't getting enough shots because uncharacteristic turnovers for them. But let's go ahead, guys, move on to game 5. And so we go back to the Valley of the Sun in Phoenix, and Suns are at home. Game 5, they should win this, right? Nope. The Bucks win it, of course. And I'll let Connor kind of break down how this game went, and then bring up any questions for us to discuss.
Yeah, so we were talking about how this game had a lot more offense going on here. Obviously 123 to 119. Pretty well everyone on the Bucks had a really good game. Except for maybe Brook Lopez, but he didn't really have to. Giannis had his usual 32 points, 9 rebounds, whatever going on there. Chris Middleton had a really good game, 29 points. Drew Holiday actually showed up for this game, 27 points. And Pat Connaughton was good coming off the bench. And even for the Suns, Devin Booker had another 40-point game. So it kind of, unfortunately for him, it wasn't like with Giannis. Giannis had those back-to-back 40-point games and at least managed to win one of the games. But unfortunately for Booker, he's had back-to-back 40-point games that have lost. So, but thankfully for him in this game, his help came back. CP3 had a really good game, a very efficient 21 points. DeAndre Ayton had 20 points. Definitely one thing that was also better about this game, we were talking about how there was so many fouls being called in game 4. There was a lot less fouls being called in this game. There was something only around 27 free throws that were shot as opposed to almost 50. So the officiating was definitely a lot better in this game. There was still the issue, though, that Devin Booker and Chris Paul did get in foul trouble. Devin Booker in foul trouble again. So I don't know if this is, something that he has to clean up, because, You can, like you said, maybe if he had been able to, I only watched like kind of the ending of this game, but if he had been able to, really not get into foul trouble, he could have maybe even had like a 50-point game. And both teams, this is actually, I remember when I went back and looked at the stats on this game, both teams were like super efficient this game. Like the Bucks were 50% from three. The Suns were an incredible 68% from three. Both teams shot over 55% from the field. The only downside here, obviously, was the fact that the Bucks were they were 52% from the line. Giannis was 4 of 11. So his free throw shooting on the road continues to be a massive struggle. I think it's probably a good thing for him that they're going to be going back, that this first, potentially deciding game is going to be at home for him, because he definitely does a lot better shooting free throws when he has the home crowd and he doesn't have,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
30 to 40,000 people screaming, 1, 2, 3, 4, just
They're
like
starting
doing
to
that.
speed it up too. I've noticed like they're getting the 10 quicker than they should.
were. I was watching that. They were counting really fast. Like there was one time where like they managed to get to 12 before he shot, but they were going like 1, 2, 3, 4. I was like, okay, that was more like 9 to 10 seconds, not really 12 seconds. So, also I know. So, but I think really it was just kind of like this game was definitely, game 4 was close, but this game was definitely better in terms of, teams making comebacks, because like we have on the slide here, the Bucks were down by 16 at one point in the first quarter. And I remember when I saw that, I just kind of was like, oh, okay, like the Suns are going to run away with this game. Like, this is just going to be another one of those blowout games. Like the Bucks just don't have it. But then to my surprise, I came back and found that the Bucks were actually, they got back into the game and the Suns were only leading by 3 at halftime. So it's like, okay, so the Bucks managed to come back. The Bucks then managed to pull away in the third quarter and even the fourth quarter. But, going back to Giannis's free throws, because the end of the game was probably the most exciting end probably of this series. And unfortunately, Giannis's free throws were a huge part of it, because the Bucks, they had a 14-point lead in the fourth quarter. Everything was looking good for them. The Suns managed to get it wasn't the fastest comeback. It wasn't like they went on a huge run and came back in like 2 minutes. It was kind of a slow, gradual over the course of the fourth quarter. And the Bucks really had a chance to put the game away when it came down to the Bucks were up by 3. Like Devin Booker made a ridiculous 3-pointer. He was like running to his right and fading away, and he managed to hit it over Middleton, which was pretty impressive. But then they came down to the other end, and Giannis had like a pretty open layup going in. Chris Paul like fouled him from behind, so that way, it was one of those intentional things, so that way Giannis just didn't get easy buckets. Yeah, it was a very smart foul by Chris Paul. So you're thinking like, okay, this was like with a minute left in the game. Like, all right, the Bucks want to go up by 3 here, like, or go up by 5 here, or potentially 4. At least make it a 2-possession game. And Giannis gets up there and misses both of the free throws. The first one wasn't terrible. It was kind of one of those ones like it hit the front of the rim, and like you see those ones that hit the front of the rim and go in. But this one kind of clattered around a little too much and went out. But then the second one was like straight off the back of the rim, so that was bad.
He overcompensated then.
Yeah,
he was short on the first one, then he went long on the second one.
So it was straight off the back of the rim, so that was bad. So then that led to a really quick, the Suns got the rebound. Chris Paul came up and had a driving layup. Then they had like a really bad offensive possession on the other end. I was watching. They it was pretty bad. They basically Chris Middleton got trapped. They were trying to get it to Giannis, and then there was one instance I think where Holiday had an open look, but then he decided to try and drive, and then he kind of like forced Middleton into that bad spot. So then they failed on that and gave the ball back to the Suns. But thankfully, this is where Zach has the steal on here. Drew Holiday had one of the best steal of the series that I saw. Like Devin Booker kind of ran into a double team, and Drew Holiday came up behind him and stole it from him. And then he was able to get a pretty nice looking alley-oop to Giannis for an and one too, because Paul fouled him again. But then again, you're thinking, okay, like Bucks up by 3, they have a chance here, get the and one and go up by 4. And then Giannis hits the front. This time he hit the front of the rim on the free throw. Like, this was the worst one out of the three. Like, it wasn't even close. I was like, man, like, what are you doing? Like, off the front of the rim. But thankfully for him, he actually managed to somehow grab his own rebound. I think Lopez managed to tap it out to him, and he got it. And then he got it to Middleton. So Middleton went to the free throw line. So you're thinking, okay, like, Giannis isn't at the free throw line. Chris Middleton, like a 88% free throw shooter, goes up and misses a free throw. I don't know what the Bucks were doing this game shooting free throws if Chris Middleton's missing them. But thankfully for them, it didn't cost them. They won the game. Very exciting. They got the Deer District was going wild, especially after the alley-oop. But everything seemed a lot cleaner in this game, I think is what I'm trying to say. Like, compared to
the stars
game 4,
showed up,
Yeah, like everything. Yeah, and everything was a lot cleaner. There was a lot less fouls. There was a lot less, craziness going on. But I don't know. For me, it's kind of worrying. I guess this is probably going to lead into my question for both of y'all. This is the first game where both teams were at their peak. And, the Bucks, even with the horrible free throw shooting, the Bucks still managed to come out on top on the road. So, I mean, obviously going into Milwaukee is definitely not a good sign for the Suns. But even if, I guess I'll pose a hypothetical. Let's say that this was the Bucks at home, or let's say that this is the Bucks on the road still. Like, let's say this game 5, they were still in Phoenix. Let's say the next game was also in Phoenix. Does this be like your peak worry for the Suns that when both teams are at full power, that the Suns, even at home, still can't beat the Bucks? Does this make it almost like, thinking inevitably that the Bucks are going to win this next game? Like, is this a biggest worry for the Suns? I don't know what I'm trying to say, but like,
Eric, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I guess just like the best question is it over for the Suns, or
okay, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, it's like, is it kind of creep into their minds like it's over? Like, we were at full strength, and we still couldn't beat them. Like, when does that doubt start to creep in, and how big is that doubt?
If I'm the Suns, the doubt is definitely creeping in. I mean, you have to, because you go from winning the first 2 games pretty easily to, getting blown out in game 3, and you're thinking, okay, well, it's just one loss, we can still overcome this, no problem. But then they lose the ugly game in game 4, like we just talked about. And then even when they play some of their best basketball that they played, they still lose at home, and the Bucks missed a ton of free throws. And now they've taken these 3 losses in a row, and they have to go back to Milwaukee now. I mean, that is concerning, obviously. In my opinion, I think the series is over after the next game. I think the Bucks are going to take it. I don't know, man. I mean, Monty Williams has proven to be a pretty good coach, though. Like, maybe he's got some adjustments he can come up with, but I don't know, man. In my opinion, I think the Bucks take the next game. Do either of you feel differently than me?
Yeah, I'm gonna pose a counter thing. Now, I do think that this game 6 could go 2 ways. It could the Bucks could blow them out, because I think if the Bucks win, I think it's going to be a blowout. But I also think too it could be there could be maybe overconfidence on the Bucks, because maybe that's how the Suns felt in game 5. Maybe they thought, we're at home, we should win this, we're the favorites, that sort of thing. Like, we'll be fine. Maybe the same thing happens for the Bucks, since they've just won 3 games in a row and they're going home. Maybe there's a bit of complacency there. I'm not saying there is. I'm just saying that's a possibility. And I could see Phoenix being like, all right, our life is on the line, because we've seen that with some other teams earlier in the playoffs, like with the Clippers and against the Mavericks and Jazz. Like, when their life was on the line and they were, right at the brink of elimination, then they come out with a huge game. So I could see it going either way. I wanted to go 7.
Obviously, as you know,
Yeah.
the basketball fan in us, we are, and since we don't, we're not set on either team necessarily.
Yeah.
At least for me, like I want to see it go 7. But my only like counter, I guess, to that counter is that the Suns haven't been in this position yet. I mean, yeah, they were down. They were down 2-1 to the Lakers, but then AD went down, and so then, of course, then they came back and won pretty easily after that, and then they swept the Nuggets, and the Clippers like put up a fight against them, but they were never trailing in that series, and then they were up 2-0 on the Bucks, and now they've lost 3 games in a row. And I think it's almost like it's probably kind of like a shell shock for them, because I mean they hadn't really been truly tested this playoffs until now. So, but I can see your point, Zach. I mean, but what I guess this is going to be my prediction for the flow of the game, and thankfully since it's on Tuesday, I'll actually be able to get to watch it. But my guess is that it's going to be very similar to Game 5. I think the Suns are going to come out hot. Like I agree with what Zach's saying. Like their lives are on the line. They're going to be going all out. They're going to get off to a hot start, but I think the Bucks are going to overcome it though, and eventually pull away at the end, like come back and then get the lead and pull away. Yeah, then pull away at the end of the game. That's my theory. But Connor, we didn't get your your answer to this question. So what do you think?
Yeah, so I definitely agree more with Eric. Shocker that I'm disagreeing with Zach, but I definitely agree. It's like, I feel like the Suns gave it all they had in Game 5, and I don't know. I just feel like, going back into Milwaukee with the way that the Bucks are playing, they haven't. I mean, like they've been able to somewhat slow down Giannis, but like it's just hasn't really worked. And Middleton's actually, for the first time in quite a while, he's in a playoff series, he's managed to string together some really good games. He's been really hot. Drew Holiday's still up and down, but like when both Giannis and Middleton are scoring, like it's nearly impossible to stop this Bucks team, especially with how good a defense that they play. So, and I think also, to Zach's point about, the Bucks getting complacent, I kind of feel like that's not going to happen for them, just because they've been in this position so many times where they've been like the heavy. I mean, even I think they're like 4 or 5 point favorites. They've been in this position so many times now in the past few seasons where, they're the heavy favorites. They've been the best team in the regular season, or like, they should win this easily, or like they're the heavy favorites for the NBA Finals. They, were 56-15, and their road in the East should be easy, like blah 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 blah. They've had so many times where they were the favorites and they didn't live up to that potential. So I don't think there's going to be any complacency this time of them thinking like, oh, we got this, like, no problem.
I don't think it's going to be like that.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Maybe you don't give as much. Like maybe you don't go as hard for a rebound sort of situation as you would as the Suns might. That's the sort of thing.
I think the other thing with that though is that you got to think about, like I said, what I was saying about the Bucks, but like also this is the NBA Finals. It's one of those things. It's like you're never gonna have. This is the moment. There's not gonna be any Cam Newtons happening here where like you're kind of not giving your effort to go after a rebound. I think everyone's going to put that 100% effort, even if the Bucks feel like that they are deserving and should have that spot. So, I mean, I will say now, if the Suns do manage to come out and win this game and win Game 6, then I'm picking them to win Game 7. Like, I think, that's what I think. I think the Bucks, I'm going to pick them to win this game, and I think they will win it, and they're going to take the series and prove all of us wrong with our predictions. But if they do lose this game, then I think the Suns are going to win Game 7.
All right, and then before I go on to our next set of discussion, I want to give a counter to Eric's counter to my counter.
Double counter.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. This is probably bit of a nerdy reference here, but this sounds like Yu-Gi-Oh going on here, where like, you have these players like nowadays with these games where it's like, I activate my trap card. Oh, but I play my spell card to counter your trap. Oh, but I have another trap card. Oh, but now I have a trap card. Like, that's what this sounds like now.
So, all right, yeah. So this is just some information that I saw watching one of these sports gambling shows where they talk about their favorite bets and whatnot, and they brought up a stat where Phoenix this season, when they have been road underdogs, are 10-5 on the season. So they do have a winning record as a road underdog.
But still good.
Yeah, no, but so it's one of those things. Obviously, we're gonna get to the Bucks being undefeated at home in the playoffs. That's a better record, but still, I think that's something too. Like Suns can win on the road as an underdog.
Well, hey, I know that definitely the biggest hamperance for the Bucks going into this game, and what is probably going to give the Suns the edge here is Zach put this on the slide, but I didn't talk about this. But the Bucks aren't going to have Thanasis Antetokounmpo. Like, they're going to be missing one of their key players, guys. Like,
you should have just been like, Antetokounmpo's not playing. Antetokounmpo's not playing.
Yeah, they get clickbaity.
Yeah, I put that in our group chat when I found out, like, before Game 5 started. I was like, well, Bucks are screwed.
Thanasis isn't playing.
Yeah.
And they don't have their like third string assistant coach,
Yeah.
I love how you said
the guy who sets up the chairs on timeouts. That's what he does. You know when they set up those little folding chairs.
Yeah, the assistant to the assistant.
Yes.
The Gatorade bottles is not available.
Well, that's the thing. It's funny because, like you said, you mentioned strings. Like the first string is like he's maybe helping out the coach with the play, and then the second string's getting the Gatorade bottles, while the third string's setting up the chairs. Like
yeah. And then the fourth string guy is the one that yells every time they think there's a foul.
Oh yeah. No, usually that's usually the strength coach. That's what I've noticed. Those are the strength coaches.
I was going to say
they want to get the most like intimidating.
Yeah.
I was going to say the fourth string's job was to point out to the mop boys where to like wipe the sweat. That was their job.
Over there.
You sweat right there.
Over there, Chris Middleton just let it all drain out.
Oh man.
Okay, let's get back on topic, guys. So let's kind of go through, like we did, these continuous finals topics, and we've already talked about this first one I had. Connor kind of picked that as his question about Game 6, but so he's on record with Bucks winning Game 6, but if the Suns win it, he thinks Suns would win the 7th game. Eric, you said you're picking the Bucks to win Game 6. If it goes 7, what would your pick be, Bucks or Suns?
Oh my God, dude! I see. For me, it would depend on how Game 6 goes. I like if the Suns like come out in Game 6 and like torch the Bucks somehow, and like just have this insane comeback after these 3 losses and blow them out, then I would think the Suns. But if it's a close game like we've had in Games 4 or 5, like I'm still giving it to the Bucks. Like they've been better in these closer situations that we've been having now. So like unless the Suns blow them out in Game 6, like I'll probably take the Bucks. But so I'm not going to officially make a pick right now. I feel like it's too early. But I'll make my pick before the game if Game 7 happens, and we'll mention it in the next episode. I will make a pick, but too early for me right now.
Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and I picked the Suns to start. I'm gonna stick with the Suns. I'm gonna say they win Game 6 here, and then coming back home, I do think they have that advantage. Being at home, the Game 6 will be the tougher one, I think, to win. Being on the road, obviously, that's tougher. So Game 6, tougher win for them, but I do think that the Suns can still win the series. I wouldn't be shocked if the Bucks win Game 6, but that's just going to be my picks. And then here's another question I have for you guys, and it's really going to, I think, depend on possibly Game 6 or 7 if necessary, but What are the chances you guys think that Chris Middleton is the Finals MVP if the Bucks win? Because we know Giannis has struggled from the free throw line, and also too, there's always, it seems to be a factor with the voting where if you have big games and a loss, they don't count as much if you had that same game and a win. And Middleton's had his better games in wins. Giannis had some good games in losses. He's had good games throughout the whole series, but Chris Middleton, these last couple he's really stepped up and in some people's eyes has been the best player in these last two games for the Bucks. So um, obviously Giannis is still the favorite, rightfully so. But do you think that there's any chance this happens? If Middleton repeats how he did a couple games ago and goes lights out, does he get Finals MVP, or do you think there's no way Giannis doesn't get it if the Bucks win? I'll start with Connor first.
I think the chances are very low. I'll say that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it would have to be a situation where, like, Middleton he would obviously have to keep up the same thing that he's been doing. I think he'd probably have to do a little bit more than he's been doing. I mean, I know he had the 40 points in in Game 4, but I mean, I think he would have to do that again because obviously he was a very efficient 29 in Game 5, but I think he needs to do more than 29. Maybe, like, again, have another like 35 to 40 point game. And I do think Giannis would have to falter in some way. Like, I know obviously the free throws are bad, but I think he would kind of have to have Giannis would have to have a game, in my opinion, like he had in Game 1, which was like it was something like he had a 20-point game or something. And like, the defense that the Suns were doing was working on him. It would have to be something like that, like 20 point. I mean, I know in that game he had a bunch of rebounds, even though he only had 20 points, but that was also a game he got into foul trouble too. I know he had 5 fouls in that game. So I feel like Giannis would have to have some kind of performance like that, because if he has another performance like he had in Game 5 or in Game 4, like not a spectacular, but still like a very solid, like Giannis-like performance, then I think Giannis has to end up taking it. Just because, I don't know, I feel like in some ways giving it to Chris Middleton, like obviously I'm not saying, that he's not deserving, but I just feel like Giannis, like if you weren't to give it to him, I feel like that almost in a way is a disservice to Giannis. And I feel like, LeBron fans say this all the time with LeBron, but I feel like the situation's a little bit different because Giannis has been going out and putting out these big games like every game. And I feel like it's one thing that, we expect it so much now that if he doesn't do something spectacular, like, when he had the 40-point games in Games 2 and 3, I feel like if he doesn't do something like that, it's almost like, oh, Giannis just had another like 30, 12, like 30-point game, 12 rebounds, whatever, sort of like game, sort of, his sort of dominant style game, but we just kind of forget about it because, oh, it's Giannis. Like he's supposed to do that. Because I feel like almost in a way, also, like makes Middleton's bad games look really bad, in my opinion, because the Suns are focusing completely on Giannis. Like Giannis is going to get all the double teams. Giannis is going to get all the attention. It's like if Chris Middleton doesn't play like he has been, then that's really bad because he's supposed to be an all-star level player. I know Zach has said that he's like the most underrated player in this series and possibly, in a large amount the NBA. It's like if he doesn't come out and have these 29-point games and, really efficient games when he's probably getting like some really good looks, then he's doing something, then that's really bad.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I feel like it's just going to be a disservice, honestly, if they don't give it to Giannis if the Bucks win. It just diminishes him as a player, in my opinion.
All right, Eric, same question for you. Do you feel as strongly as Connor, or are you more open-minded with Middleton having a chance for MVP?
I feel pretty much as strongly as Connor. I
Yeah.
mean, and I definitely agree that Middleton is deserving. I mean, this is the most consistent like stretch in a playoff series that I've seen from him. He hasn't really been having like an up game and then a down game and then 2 up games and a down game, or whatever. Like like he's been playing pretty well the entire series, and I give him a ton of credit for that. He's obviously a big reason why the Bucks are doing so well, but I think just with the whole like with the storyline of Giannis having that knee injury that looked horrific, but he came back within a week and played in the finals. I mean, just putting the numbers aside for a second, I mean, I think the storyline of him coming back and doing that, and then not only playing through it, you're having some MVP level games in the series during that. I mean, I just with everything that he did to get back and ready for the finals. I mean, I think you have to give it to him if the Bucks win the series. Plus, he's also had some huge individual plays in this legacy that those individual moments like, and it was either game 3 or game 4, I don't remember, but he had that. Or God, I can't remember which game it was. That's bad. I don't remember, but where DeAndre Ayton was like going up they were trying to like lob it up to him for him to get an alley-oop dunk, and he blocked it.
That was game 4 where he had that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was. I knew it was one of the ones that they won. I just couldn't remember, but so I mean, especially with that one being a close game, I mean that was a huge moment to spur the Suns' momentum, and then obviously the alley-oop he got on that fast break to pretty much seal game 5. I mean that those moments are huge. So people are going to look at that too. People might not necessarily look at the factor of the whole series, but he's had some incredible moments, and I give him a ton of credit for coming back from the injury. So like I do think Middleton has a chance. I don't think it's very high though.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm not as much as Connor where like if Middleton gets it, then it would diminish Giannis. I don't feel that strongly. Like I would be okay if Middleton gets it, but I do agree though that I do think Giannis should get it, barring a horrible, like if they win a game 6 and he has a horrible game or something, barring something like that, I'd give it to Giannis.
All right, and then another question I have for you. Booker has now had back-to-back 40-point games, but they've both been losses, so he desperately needs some sort of help. I'll ask you guys this question, like, and you can go different directions with this. Where does the help need for Booker? Do you think they need more help defensively? Do you think he needs more offensive help from a certain player? What sort of help referees getting him to the free throw line more? Like you can go any kind of direction on this. I'll let Eric start on this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough answer because it seems like there's just been inconsistencies from his team at different, points in the series. But for me, like I kind of alluded to it earlier, but I know he had a much better, a better game 5, but he needs more help from Chris Paul. I mean, he's got to be more consistent with the jumper, less turnovers. Let me ask you this. This is just for like this finals, right? This isn't like going forward.
Yeah, this is just the series. I'm not talking about like the future.
Okay, because I'll say that if there's one thing that like will also really grind my gears, like the rest I talked about, it's when a team in the NBA finals, and this often happens to LeBron's teams, but then they lose, and then the narrative is, well, he needs more help. I'm like, bro, you were in the NBA finals. Like, you've got a good team. Like other than that one year where the Cavs just had a bunch of bums and he got them to the fight, that one is like the one where I'll make an exception. But like this year, obviously AD went down, but when there was the whole like, oh, they need more help, I'm like, bro, like this is a final. This team just won the championship. Like, I don't want to hear that. But so that's kind of where I thought you were going with this. Like, was for the off season. I was like, ooh, I don't really like this because the Suns are in the finals. But yeah, but Chris Paul needs to be more like he did in games 1 and 2. He needs to be more efficient, not having the turnovers, but also like, even though he's had these great 40-point games, he needs to stop getting into foul trouble because he's missing chunks of the game. And, while these 40-point games have obviously been great, I mean, you don't see that happen too often, even with today's NBA, with it being more stat driven and quick paced offense and stuff. Like, you still don't see that all the time. But when you're getting in foul trouble, that's leading to you having to be on the bench, and that's hurting your team. Or even if you stay out there in foul trouble, you can't be as aggressive because you don't want to get more fouls. So there is still more that he could do, but teammate wise, I'm going Chris Paul. What about you, Connor?
Yeah, it's a tough question. I mean, I'm trying to think of something different, so I figured you'd probably go the Chris Paul route. I mean, honestly, I guess I could probably make the argument that they do need more help defensively. I mean, I don't know where they're going to get it from, because obviously, we've talked about this before, like the lack of size that they have compared to the Bucks. Like when DeAndre Ayton's out on the court or not on the court, getting rebounds is really hard. Especially if, like, even if Giannis or Lopez is on the bench, like they have Bobby Portis to go grab rebounds for them. So, which, I mean, he didn't grab a whole lot in Game 5, surprisingly. He only had 3, but I think it's just more so the defensive side, like containing, Giannis and Middleton and all of that. Because, I mean, when you have a game where you shoot 68% from 3 and you lose, like, that's gut wrenching.
That's bad.
Yeah. It's clearly, to me, there's some kind of issue on the defensive side of the ball. I don't know what it is to fix it, because obviously, they had that whole thing, like the Giannis wall that they put up, that was going to stop Giannis, but clearly that hasn't exactly worked as well as they hoped it would. Like, Giannis hasn't scored 40 points again, but, he's still been, 26 in Game 4 and 32 in Game 5. Like, that's still not helpful. And then again, Middleton going off. So they just have to find defense from somewhere. Like I said, I don't know where they can find it from, but they need to find a way to control Giannis and really just control Middleton at this point, because they prove that they can win with Giannis scoring a lot of points if they kept Middleton in check. Because, I mean, if you look back at, really, especially Game 2, when Middleton only had like 11 points, and they managed to win that game quite easily, because Giannis didn't have the support of his cast. So really, in my mind, keep up with whatever you're doing with Giannis, but maybe draw up something to try and, even if you want to double team Giannis, try and find a way to stop Chris Middleton too. I don't know, again, what that would be, who you would put on him, like what the strategy would be, but find some defensive answer to Chris Middleton, because, that's really what's been killing them, because, it hasn't really worked with Giannis, and I'm not sure there's much else they could do with him. So if you can't find another answer to Giannis, then find a way to stop Middleton.
Yeah, I like that answer. And then this last question might be the most hypothetical one we've asked all night, because I know we've asked some hypothetical ones, but obviously, it's noted that the Bucks are undefeated at home this year in the playoffs, and this is, like I said, real hypothetical, but do you think we underestimated the Bucks this year because of last year's playoffs in the bubble, and there was no home court advantage, and if there had been, the Bucks wouldn't have lost like they did, and they might have competed for a championship? Do you think the fact of them, having a home court advantage is such a big difference that, this is almost the same Bucks team except for Drew Holiday, is the missing piece the home court advantage for the playoffs, or is that not as big of a factor? I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like, do they win last year if they play at home, because we've seen how good they are at home this year? I'll start with Connor first.
I mean, I'm sure the Bucks would tell you that, because I know that was actually, I remember listening and reading about that was one of their excuses. I remember when they were, getting destroyed by the Heat for the most part. Like, I don't remember who it was who was saying it. I mean, maybe it was Budenholzer, I can't remember, but like somebody within the organization, some prominent person, player or coach, was basically saying that they were like, oh, like, it's really hard. Like, we're down here in the bubble, and we did all this work in the regular season to be the number one team, and now we don't have our fans cheering us on. So I mean, I don't think it's a huge deal, honestly. I mean, it's definitely impressive, that you're undefeated at home, and you want to have the fan support, and you want to have David Bakhtiari chugging beers at your games, but it's I don't think it's a huge deal. Really, I don't think they would have. I still don't think they would have won last year if they had been at home. I think they were just kind of, I don't know. I think they were still disorganized in a way. The organization that they somehow found this year, even if I'll say this, like even if they had managed to make it through the East last year, with the way that they were playing, by the time at that time of the season, I think the Lakers would have still beaten them. Like I think the Lakers were the better team by that point. So yeah, I don't think it's a huge deal, but it's something that you obviously can't look away from, especially when this is like the deciding game in the NBA Finals, and you're going into Milwaukee, where Milwaukee is, I don't know the official record, but like you said, undefeated at home. It's like makes it just that slightly bit more intimidating. Maybe it gets into the head of Phoenix just slightly more. I don't know.
All right, so Eric, do you agree with Connor, or do you think more that wow, maybe they really would have won last year if they were at home, and seeing this year
Nah,
for the
the Bucks just straight choked last year. I mean, that's such a pathetic excuse. Oh, we didn't have our fans. Like,
or Paul George. That's kind of like Paul George saying like, "Oh, I'm having the anxiety or whatever it was."
Yeah, when I'm in a 5-star hotel getting free food every night, I'm only having to travel 5 minutes to the game,
getting paid millions of dollars.
Yeah, like the whole I mean, obviously, yeah, when you're competing in a season and you're in the top 3 seeding, you're going to go for that number 1 seed to try to get the home field or home court advantage. And it sucked they didn't get it last year, but I mean, let's be real, they straight choked. I mean, and to be like, oh, we didn't have our fans, like, well, neither did anybody else. I mean, it's not like
everyone else was in the same boat.
It's not like when they lost to the Heat last year and they played games 1 and 2, that then they had to play that in the bubble, but then games 3 and 4 they had to go to Miami, and Miami had their fans in the arena or something. Like, Miami didn't have home court advantage for games 3 and 4 in that series. Like, nobody had home court.
There was only like de facto home and away teams.
Yeah, they had
the video boards.
Yeah, the Videotrons with the Bucks logo on it,
and the like animated Bucks fans sitting in the chairs or the seats or whatever.
Noise. Yeah,
because maybe you could say, well, maybe you lose a game that would have been a home game. Maybe you would have won that game if you were at home, but then you could also win a game a couple games later that would have been on the other team's home court. So it's like, I don't know, that was a pretty pathetic excuse by the Bucks last year when that happened. Like that's I guess been the biggest difference for me between the Bucks last year to this year is like Chris Middleton and Giannis have both done a much better job in the playoffs of stepping up in key moments and not disappearing in the fourth quarter and going on the Kyle Lowry milk carton. I mean, they've done a lot better. I mean, even though the Nets had some injuries, like when they beat the Nets and game 7 overtime in that series, that's when I was like, okay, this is a sign that the Bucks are turning it around and they're starting to get away from this choke artist label. The fact that they came through in that series, and even after Kevin Durant hit that big shot to tie the game, like they didn't let it phase them and they still went and won in overtime. Like and that game wasn't at home, that was on the road. So it wasn't the home court advantage or anything like that. They choked last year. They weren't going to win.
All right, guys.
If they had the mentality that they do now, like this year, if they had that same mentality last year, maybe they could have won, but they didn't have it last year. And I do have to make a dad joke. After we talked about, like, are we being that podcast with the big Bucks thing earlier? So I've got one for the Suns. Is the sun setting on the Suns NBA season?
Oh my God, Eric, you're gone. Don't come back.
Eric's been banned. I'm gonna have
I've
to run that. I'm gonna have to run that episode in a couple weeks by myself.
And another Yu-Gi-Oh quote: "They have banished me to the Shadow Realm." You know?
Oh my lord.
Okay, they're like, now you're gone for sure.
Yeah, now you really are gone.
All right, someone cut Eric's mic off, guys. All right, thank you guys for listening and watching to this episode. Let us know on Twitter if you agree with our takes. You can find us on Twitter at clutchcrewsport, and we are going to be back next week. We will for sure
Minus
know
Eric.
a champion. Yeah, minus Eric. We will for sure know who has won the series. We'll be here to talk about it, and then the next season starts right up again. So we got a mock draft as well in next week's episode. Hopefully you'll tune in for that. And until then, remember, be clutch.
Bye.
Peace.